All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of FinServ Tech Oracles. I'm John Itil Johnson, and I'm here with my oracular colleague, Jerry Murphy. We're going to share our thoughts on technology for financial services firms. And today, Jerry, you wanted to talk about the concept of an NDA and how the SEC is taking steps to ensure that clauses in these NDA agreements don't also serve to inhibit whistleblowers from reporting potential corporate wrongdoing. Jerry, can you kick off by outlining the steps that the SEC is taking?
Yeah, well, we've had a couple episodes where we've talked about how they're getting increasingly aggressive at financial firms for various violations. NDAs is just another one of these where in the last few months they've been actually starting to do fines where they say that companies' non-disclosure agreements are potentially violating or impeding the ability of employees to actually, call out if their company's doing anything wrong. Most recently, they did this with a fine with a hedge fund. They fined them $10 million for their non-disclosure agreements. So that's what they're doing. They're being aggressive. They're saying you're impeding on employees' ability to speak out. And I think in addition to the other things, people are going to have to relook how they're actually setting up their NDAs with their employees.
What are some of the things they need to look for in setting up these NDAs?
Well, I think you have to, there's a difference, I think, between saying that you're not going to tell a prospective other employee, a competitor, about proprietary things you're learning, which is another thing to say whether or not you can speak out if you think there's any wrongdoings going on. So I think there's going to be more clarity as opposed to just blanket agreements saying you can't tell anybody about anything. The agreements are going to have to be more precise about the kinds of things you can say, not say, and who are those people specifically that you can or can't say them to. They're going to be more.
That is interesting. I've never seen an NDA that's specified, and I've signed dozens to hundreds of them, possibly thousands throughout my life. I've never seen an NDA that specifically said you can say X to person X, but not Y to person Y or whatever. That's actually pretty interesting.
I think the reason we haven't seen that is because they're incredibly generic, right? They tend to be done on the side. They would just say you're not allowed.
Thou shalt not speak
about intellectual property and all this, and you're not allowed. They basically say you're not allowed to disclose this to anyone. And of course, the SEC law enforcement would certainly say, well, no,
you have to
you got to be able to tell
us. Yeah.
Us. And so I think that's where
that's interesting. That's interesting. I see what you're saying. Yeah.
You can say, and I think there's an implication, or there's people just assuming what you mean are competitors, but that's not usually how they're written. They just say you can't tell anybody,
right
outside of the company.
So you'll have to actually start revising your NDAs to explicitly say, carve out a clause that says whistleblowers are protected. I'm going to throw you a bit of a curveball, but since I know you've got a long, deep experience in DLP, is there anything technology can be doing to help people sort of, and I'm thinking of the employees, parse through what is proprietary and what isn't proprietary as they're trying to decide what to say to whom?
Well, that's actually an interesting point. I mean, you could certainly go to whatever data loss prevention tool somebody has and see what is the specific types of information that they're filtering on, with the assumption that the things that you're filtering for data loss are the things that your company is concerned about other people finding out about. So that would be an interesting place to look. And you would think mostly it would be intellectual property things. But if you find out that your policies are filtering on, your personal information or something like, or salaries or other things that maybe aren't germane to protecting the company's intellectual property, that might be worth raising a flag. So that's an interesting thought.
Yeah, and actually, now that you mentioned that, PII might include things like salaries, but at the same time, there's a growing movement to say that employees may not restrict information sharing among employees about salaries for, purposes of equality, because, and I know this from my previous experience as CTO, when we accidentally released everybody's salaries, accidentally on purpose, somebody did, we were able to look at this and very quickly see that we were consistently underpaying women. The good news was we rectified it immediately. The bad news is, why did it have to wait until it was public? So interesting thoughts.
Interesting you say it too, because if you remember, just recently
Mhm.
in the last couple of years, was either New York City or New York State said that employees must disclose salary information to people, which I
Yeah,
thought was
and I mean, you and I both have background, in my case, indirect with the military, and one of the great things about government service is everybody knows what everybody else makes,
right.
and that's for purposes of fairness. So,
And I think in
any
general that's true in public. I was surprised to find out my daughter recently became the vice principal of our local high school, and her salary was put right in the paper.
because it has to be, it really does. Anyway, we've gotten a little bit off topic, but I
Yeah.
think it sounds like what you're saying is the takeaway for financial services firms. Um, if you are a tech person listening to this, you probably want to go to HR and say, "Hey, we need to revise our NDAs to align with this, so we don't get slammed with a fine, and B, think yourself about orienting your DLP and DLP processes towards this new focus on the NDAs."
That's a great idea, and that's a great mechanism for double checking yourself too.
Exactly, exactly. Okay, well, that's it. Thank you, Jerry, and thanks everybody for watching. Please remember you can register for the entire series online. Please do. It's on Bright Talk, and if you're watching this on Bright Talk, you can click the channel right beside us. If not, just hop onto Bright Talk, create an account, and you'll be right in. Tune in next week at 0900 for the next episode of FinServ Tech Oracles, right before the markets open on Tuesdays.
See you then.
And there we go.